My name's Madelyn Taylor. I've been competing now since 2017. So it feels like a long time for me. And just at nationals this last week, so a week from yesterday, turned pro. Been working, towards that, since I started, which is really just exhilarating. I'm still riding that high a little bit. And before competing, was a distance runner, really kind of was that just underweight, typical, like not eating enough type of athlete. And I was good at running. It was something that I enjoyed, and I'd done 9 or 10 half marathons, but realized that it wasn't getting me to where I wanted to be. So, physique wise or like confidence wise. So once I dove into weightlifting and kind of explored that avenue, it really kind of took off from there. And I just fell in love with the process ever since. And, just excited to see now joining the IFBB, being able to get onto that pro stage at some point and continue, doing this because I love it. I eat, breathe, sleep it. And it's something I want to continue for sure.
So going from running to bodybuilding, where did that introduction to the sport begin for you?
So I grew up in a family that was very athletic. Both my parents were multi-marathon runners, so that's where the running piece started. So I just kind of naturally fell into that. It wasn't really until college and then when I met my now husband where the weightlifting came in. So I was someone that didn't really know about it. Like it wasn't even something on my radar. My college didn't really have the biggest gym, so it wasn't a big thing for my university, but guys don't like cardio. So when I met my husband, he was like, yeah, I don't run, like I'm not doing cardio, I'm going to be in the gym. So that's where we kind of were like, okay, if I want to spend time in that area where health was important to both of us, I had to start exploring the weightlifting side of things, and that's kind of where it started.
Gotcha. And was there any of that kind of intimidation or like fearfulness or anxiety moving into the weights side of things?
Yes, it was a process. So it definitely wasn't like, oh, all of a sudden now I'm a weightlifter. It was, I'm going to add in maybe some gym time in addition to my running. So for me, because running was where I cleared my head, I still needed that at that time to just manage stress and anxiety. But there even came a point where like I was told I wasn't allowed to run because I was too underweight. So it went too extreme. So when I discovered the weightlifting, that's kind of where like the aha moment and that transition happened too, is because I was like, oh, I can build up my body in a way that I didn't know was possible when everyone else was just like, eat Snickers, gain weight. From coming from a girl's perspective, you're like, no freaking way. But when I realized I could eat and train to gain weight in a healthy way, it was like this weird control that allowed me to shape my body that I didn't know was possible.
Yeah, it's so funny like how the like gain weight has this negative stereotype around it because it is like um there's not that much education and knowledge even from like a lot of times like a professional viewpoint of how like you can gain weight in a positive way and how to put on muscle and how to like shape your body and build it and it's so bizarre that it's kind of like that's how it is and it's like so many people see gaining weight and it automatically without any explanation necessary it's like, oh, I don't want to gain weight. Well, I didn't even get into the fine details of what that even means yet, so how could you be pro or con that single statement? It's just so weird.
It is. And I think in that sense, even going to a nutritionist, they're not really telling you, hey, here's how to build lean muscle. It was something I had to discover on my own. I saw nutritionists way back in the day, and it was just like, here's how to eat healthy and make sure maybe have an extra scoop of peanut butter with your lunch. And it's like, looking back now, it's just that wasn't the guidance that I needed. And I think gets lost between, they're obviously experts at what they do as a nutritionist, but not in the sense of where I was struggling with body image and needing to put on weight and be like, hey, I can put on muscle, not just weight or, body fat.
Yeah. So getting into kind of the gym and lifting more weights, what kind of like, how long did it take you to be like noticing and seeing the results and feeling the confidence or whatever you want to call it, for you? How long did it take for you to kind of see that happen for you?
I really think the first 6 months of my lifting was where I experienced the most growth. Even looking back now, like when I first started my Instagram and I first started taking like photos and documenting those first couple months, I'm like, holy cow, like I did that. Like it was very surprising. Like people call it the newbie gains, but I was coming from this very tiny, underweight person to finally giving my body what it needed. And, genetically too, I'm gifted in that area. So I'm grateful for it. But really, when I started putting those things in place, it was very dramatic in that first, I would say, 6 months.
You're starting to lift weights and then you're like, okay, I want to do bodybuilding. That becomes like your goal. But whenever you started doing that, how did that like, or if it did, affect like the benefits and the positives that you have seen? Because now whenever you're getting into bodybuilding, there is more of that you see, with the restrictive thing and people kind of sometimes struggling with that and maybe having trouble mentally. Like how did you handle, okay, I'm doing good and I feel good to oh wow, now it's kind of very rigid and these are the things that I have to do.
It was, again, another long transition. So I still practice like flexible dieting and macros. So I never really fell into the meal plans or, you can only eat chicken and broccoli type of, bodybuilding. So I think that was helpful for me to build that like healthier relationship with food. Obviously, as you get closer to stage, right, it gets a little bit more strict. And I think coming from a place where I did have an unhealthy relationship with food, and even especially, I would say, for my family, now when I transitioned to really diving into the sport and like going through a prep, it was scary for my family to see because they started to see those same tendencies that I had back in the day, where it was like, oh wait, you're getting smaller again, and you're restricting your food or limiting your food to go through a fat loss phase. So for me, I think I did better than the people around me because they didn't understand what had transitioned in my head. But for me, it was just a newfound control in a healthy way instead of restricting because I was unhappy with where I was at, or restricting because that was the only thing I could feel like I could control, whatever that mindset was now, hey, if I follow this structured plan and I had this control over my nutrition, the results are going to be X, Y, and Z. And it was for a very specific purpose. So I think if that answers your question, that was kind of where my head and mindset shifted.
Yeah, so it sounds like kind of it became more of like a choice. It became of more of like I'm doing it for this given goal, and instead of like almost it was controlling you.
Hmm.
And I think bodybuilding it really can, there's definitely some goods and bads, but I feel like it really can reshape the way that you do see food and you see it more as like it's more of like a means to an end. It's more of this is this is part of a process and it's not like because I feel like especially throwing out bodybuilding even the this country has a big problem with like food being so like so important. It's important to every like social experience and holidays and it's like it's there for you when times are good. It's there for you when times are bad. It almost in bodybuilding it like it returns it to what it is. Okay, this is just so I can do other things. This isn't the main purpose. This is like just giving me energy, really what food should be.
Exactly.
So whenever you decided to do that first show, did you have kind of like a plan moving forward from that afterwards and like, okay, these are my goals I want to achieve in the sport? Or what was it like for you? Was it kind of like, I just wanted to try this experience out and see what happens? What was it? What's kind of the outlook for you?
So my first shows in 2017, I did two OCB competitions to kind of get my feet wet. And then I did one NPC show as well that first season. That was really a time for me to just understand the sport. I didn't really know what I was doing at that point. Looking back now, I wasn't developed enough either. I think a lot of people experience that their first show is like, okay, you need more time to grow. But even after the fact, I didn't really have a game plan. I'm pretty sure I dropped my coach like as soon as the show was over. I don't really have it remember having a reverse plan or really any type of goal set after the fact. It was just like I did it. I realized at that point, I was meant to, like, in my head, I was like, hey, I was meant to do this. I did quite well my first three shows in both federations. So I was like, I love this. I definitely want to continue it, but I didn't necessarily be like, all right, I need to build for X number of years or months. It was, I'm going to go back to not being as restrictive, and I'm going to lift some weights and eat some food. And um, it definitely was some more time until I, came back and was like, hey, I want to, revisit this.
Was the reversing aspect, was that even something that you were aware of at the time, or was it something that you didn't have any kind of idea what was that was about?
I don't think I really understood that that was a thing. I think I heard the word thrown around, but I was like, "Hey, I can do this." Like that's not difficult. Not realizing that that's almost harder than the prep now. Nowadays, that's like the hardest part, but at the time, no, I was like, "Yep, see you later. I'm going to go do this on my own," and shouldn't have, but did.
Is that something that does get more challenging as you get more shows under your belt and you kind of get deeper into the sport?
No, I wouldn't say that necessarily. I just know myself, and I think a lot of competitors, once that goal is out of sight, like that show or, getting your pro card or that next show, it's just hard to stay as rigid. But in order to make sure your body's in a healthy place, and again, like not just putting on body fat, you want to take it slow. And your hunger cues may be super high, but you can't just eat all the food because your body's not used to it. So I think it's more of a mindset thing where when you're in prep, you see the changes pretty easily week to week, and okay, I have to do this because I'm stepping on stage on X date. Whereas when you reverse, regardless if it's your first show or your 20th show, it just you're entering a phase that the stage is going to be a little, it's going to be far off.
And how do you, I mean, I guess other than just the fact of longevity and health, but like what continues to push you to stay thoughtful about all those things after a show?
The biggest thing is I love to train. That's something I really enjoy, and I discovered in my last improvement season how fun more of a powerlifting type of training and like strength goals is. So that's something you have that you don't have during prep, where there's weeks and months where you're just like, you're in there in the gym doing what you can to get through a workout, but you're not getting the same satisfaction from a lift as you are when you're eating well and you have the energy.
Yeah.
So that is a really fun aspect of the improvement season, where you really do get to set different type of goals to keep you focused. But that's also where the physiques are built that win at a national level or at a pro level. So that's where you're like, hey, if I don't take this seriously and I don't stick with my plan, you're going to step back on stage the exact same way you did last time, and that's not going to cut it this go round.
Yeah. And whenever you do or did step on those stages that were, more competitive, the people had been doing it for longer, people were, they had just more experience and better physiques. Like, how did that impact you, your first experience in seeing that? And, was it something that was very motivating? Was it something that was kind of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm like with these people? Like, how did that hit you?
I time and time again, I do get beat out by like the masters women. Like I remember it was either my first or second show. I got second place and the winner was like 45 years old. So it is those people that have the muscle maturity or have that experience that when my physique was beating me. And so it was intimidating because I was like, okay, there's a huge gap here, but it did allow me to see like, hey, I am young in this sport, or at the time, especially when I first started. And even now, like looking at some of the top level pros, they're in their 30s. I'm 28. So, it's like, hey, I can continue to do this and still be successful. So it is motivating, I think, for me to be like, all right, I see my potential, but these people have already gotten to, that next level. That's where I want to go. And you always are chasing the next level. You're always like, okay, I got to the top of the first mountain. Now I see the peak of the next one, and you just keep climbing it.
Yeah, and every time, you really do have to you're at the top of that mountain for just such like a short period of time, and then it's climbing to the next one. So, how do you is it just the love of it? Is it the love of the process? Is it the love of getting on stage? Or is it something else that really keeps you pushing to, keep going through that process, keep climbing that mountain and just try to keep improving and win?
I've always been a very extreme person. So, like, in a sense where when I find something I love, I'm an all in person and I'm going to put all my attention towards it. I don't like to put my eggs in a million different baskets. So, that definitely has shown in this sport. I don't I would say out of the whole aspect of it, the stage is not something that is at the top for me. It's part of it and I do enjoy it, but I'm not like the girl that had the dance background or, stage and did pageants. Like that part is actually more out of my comfort zone than eating, and tracking my macros and training and pushing myself hard in the gym. That's the stuff that I do love. So I do think it just comes down to it's part of my lifestyle. It's where I clear my head. It's what my husband likes to do too. So we spend a lot of time in a gym. We're building out our own gym at home here. So it's something that I just enjoy. And the stage and the actual competition part of it just allows me to push myself to be better and be like, okay, what am I really capable of? It just kind of quantifies it a little bit.
And I actually have a little bit of experience running. I ran a marathon and I trained for that, obviously. And,
Yeah.
you know, it just sounds like I've never done a bodybuilding show, but it just sounds like it's almost polar opposites as far as like, when you're running, it's almost like this solitary thing and you're by yourself and um, no one's really there to like speaking specifically of like the competition side of the the event of running, not just the training but the event. It's so solitary and but with bodybuilding it's right there, it's on a stage, people are watching, there's judges judging you, there's the competitors right there literally inches away from you. How do you utilize, I guess, the skills and the experience of running and competing in that sport, with now this kind of almost completely opposite experience of competing?
I don't know if there's much overlap to be honest, or like anything that I really transferred over. I think the biggest thing is just the fact that it allows you to compete in some sense, right? While running is very like on your own, you still want to like be the fastest in your age group, or you want to for the big marathon runners like qualify for Boston. Like there's still those, I think in every sport, those benchmarks. So I think in that way, it is relatable where it just allows you to place. It allows you to compare yourself to other competitors or other athletes. But there's not a there's definitely not a ton of overlap in the two. So I do think that it's a big shift. That's for sure.
This episode is sponsored by Fountain TRT. Fountain wants to help you with your potential low T. Why do I say potential low T? Because a large percentage of men don't even know they're suffering from low T. They simply live with the symptoms that include weight gain, sluggishness, and erectile dysfunction and have no idea of the cause. Fountain wants to help you figure out if low T is your issue and help you get your levels back to a healthy range with a topical cream. The Fountain team are medical professionals who have years of experience in the industry and expertise in TRT. These labs are often covered by insurance and you may not have to pay anything out of pocket. The topical treatment is easy to use, just apply it once daily to your shoulder area. Most men start seeing results immediately. So if you're ready to gain back your energy, drive, and mental clarity, lose that stubborn weight, and just generally feel happier, check out Fountain TRT and use the link below to support the weight room and claim your $1 evaluation. This episode is brought to you by Move Your Body Apparel, a Lexington-based, community-ran premium activewear brand that promotes the importance of daily movement. For the rest of the year, MYB is donating a percentage of every order to the Special Olympics of Kentucky. Save 20% off your first order with the link below or use code TWR20 online at mybapparel.com. And also, like in running, not that you would, but if you held back, like if not necessarily every training event, but if you held back maybe a training here or there, you could still improve, you could still get better, and on training or on the race event, you could still you could come out and have a great run, be feeling great, everything kind of works your way in some senses, and you could place better maybe than you deserve based on your specific training. But in bodybuilding, it's completely the opposite, everything in training is pretty much that's what it's the event is just a physical representation of the training and of the prep. So was there anything for you, when you first stepped on stage, it was of course you have to do, your posing and things, but other than that, everything else is already done. Was that weird for you at all? That it wasn't anything else? It was just hey, look what I've done the past X amount of weeks.
Yes, but then it does come down to how consistent were you on that plan? When you do get up there, yes, it's all right, I'm bringing what I'm bringing. And I think even these past shows this year, it's you get up there, you do your routine between prejudging and finals. It is that long wait that sucks, but you're I did what I came to do. I cannot change anything at this point, because up until prejudging, you could mess up your tan, you could mess up your posing. So there are little things that leading up to it can make a big difference. Yeah, but once you get up there and you do your thing, it's all right, it's out of your hands. And there is that subjectivity of it where, unlike so many sports out there that are very black and white, did you score a goal, did you cross the finish line, there's so many factors that part is really hard, because what looks good to one person may look different to someone else. And while there are guidelines in that overall look that they're going for, it does depend who shows up, it does depend on the stage lighting. There's just those things that really are affecting the way it's judged and how each show goes. You have to put a little bit out of your mind just to to be able to make it in this sport, I think.
When it comes to recovery, how have you gotten better at that? And what do you do anything particular as far as recovery goes?
I could definitely do better. I think that's definitely an area that I don't do fantastic at. Whereas there's people who they get their massages or the cupping, regularly, right? And it's so much more important than I think is talked about. It isn't something that people are posting about, or hey, getting my stretching in. It's oh yeah, I'm killing myself on the treadmill, or the Stairmaster, I'm doing my lifts. So I do think it's something that needs to be emphasized more, because when your body's in a stress state, it's not going to have that same look that you're wanting, and it's going to hold on to that cortisol. So there's a lot of important factors to that recovery. I think, I have started to add in more of like the yoga wheel stretching that, a lot of the bikini girls had got into in terms of like flexibility for posing. We have the Theragun, right? That is always nice because it's easy and you can kind of take it with you wherever. And that forces you to kind of take care of yourself rather than like you can put off making an appointment, for a massage any day. But if the Theragun's sitting right there, it's like, all right, like gotta use it, gotta take a few minutes to do that. So yeah, I think that recovery piece is really important. And during my improvement season, I think I spent more rest days than I ever have this past improvement season, which was a game changer for me because I am an all in person. So I would train 7 days a week if I could. Well, I mean, I could, but if I knew it was going to help me. But I was training 3, 4 days a week in my improvement season. I made more progress during that time than I ever have, which was awesome.
Yeah, I think that's such an important lesson for people is like more is not always better. It's for people who love to train too. Like, why wouldn't a bodybuilder love to train? That's such a huge part of it. And to tell somebody like that to kind of back off a little bit, it's in the same way telling somebody else to train. It's like it's equally as hard to do that. But and I think finding and understanding like having a really good coach or having really good knowledge yourself about like, hey, if I'm training 6 days a week, this is how I train. If I'm training 3 days a week, I can't train like that. I have to train a different way. Or if I'm training 4 days a week, here's how I'm training to optimize that amount of time. So just kind of understanding the ins and outs. And I think that comes with experience and it comes with just, learning how your body adapts to training.
And I think for me, I was someone that was like, I'll go in the gym and do every back machine you can find. And, you see, especially in the beginning, I'd be like, you see that 8 to 12 rep range, 3 to 4 sets. So in my head, that was the most important piece. I was like, all right, going in the gym, I'm doing that on everything, every cable, every plate loaded machine, every dumbbell. And it's just like I didn't know at the time that just was not optimal, and it was not getting me further along than if I would actually just train with intensity for, specific, like find the movements that work for you, train with intensity. And, when I was doing my 3 to 4 day split, it was awesome. And I was getting way more out of it than those days where I would just like go in and do it all.
This episode is brought to you by Move Your Body Apparel, a Lexington-based, community-ran premium activewear brand that promotes the importance of daily movement. For the rest of the year, MYB is donating a percentage of every order to the Special Olympics of Kentucky. Save 20% off your first order with the link below or use code TWR20 online at mybapparel.com. This episode is sponsored by Fountain TRT. A large percentage of men don't even know they're suffering from low T. Fountain wants to help you figure out if low T is your issue and help you get your levels back to a healthy range with a topical cream. The topical treatment is easy to use, just apply it once daily to your shoulder area. Most men start seeing results immediately. Check out Fountain TRT and use the link below to support the weight room and claim your $1 evaluation. This podcast is sponsored by Smoking Gun Coffee, a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to give back to those in need. Don't forget to use code TWR10 for a 10% discount at checkout. Yeah, efficiency, extremely important, and especially in a sport where like you have so much to do, for simple sake of time, like you have to be efficient with your time. You have to be able to manage that, and you have to, because bodybuilding isn't the only thing obviously that you're doing. You have other things in your life. So if you can save an hour each day, like that's huge. That's time that, I know if I had another hour in the day that it'd be awesome to have every day. But looking forward into kind of the future, what does kind of your next season look like? Have you kind of laid anything out specifically? What do you have any plans?
Yeah, so I don't have anything in stone. Obviously, my big thing is I do want to compete as a pro. That's one of my, my biggest pet peeves is people who turn pro and never utilized the card. It's like it's so much more than just saying you're a pro. It's like now we have that opportunity, and it's a huge blessing to be able to be like, now I get to step on stage with the best in the world, and it's a smaller pool, and it's just a totally different experience. So there is some benefit of diving right into a pro debut, after doing or after turning pro, so that you can really see how you stack up and go into an improvement season knowing exactly what you need to work on. But this has been a extremely long year for me. I had my first show in May this year, and I just turned pro last weekend in December. So my body needs the time off. So whether I was going to do a show or not, I need to grow to be really competitive at the pro level. So it would definitely be a year or two until I can put on enough size naturally and get back up there. Um, that's something that I haven't really thought about in terms of like, and I don't know how far, I don't care, but right now I'm natural. A lot of pros aren't. Would I cross over into that, to be more competitive at that point? I don't know. Short term goals, honestly, is probably starting a family in that year or two and growing a family, but growing myself at the same time, enjoying life a little bit, and then diving back in, when I'm 30 ish, to get back up on stage.
And you kind of mentioned it, but are there any things that you don't look forward to when it comes to just thinking about like, man, I have to go through this, or we'll have to do this, or my body, in this state, or what if things don't go great, in my, post show, like, is there any of the negatives that you think about, like that are just kind of sometimes weigh on your mind a little bit?
I wouldn't necessarily call them negatives, but I mean, absolutely, especially coming from such a long season, I'd be lying if I wasn't scared about the next couple months of reversing and putting on healthy weight. Being stage lean is not sustainable. It's not healthy. So we need to work on getting my hormones back to, a healthy place. There's a lot of things I need to get just my body in a happy rhythm again. But that does come with, like we kind of talked in the beginning, gaining weight. So it definitely weighs on my mind in terms of like, okay, I know I'm going to have to shift my mindset and be super strong during this time because I've seen myself super lean for so long. It even just a little bit of healthy weight is going to be like, oh my gosh, like this is uncomfortable. Even if to the rest of the world, it's like, no, you look fine. So absolutely. And selfishly, that's part of the reason I'm like, I mean, I want to start a family regardless, but if I go that route and I'm like, hey, I'm ready for kids, during this time of improvement, that's weight gain right there. That's inevitable. So I'm like, hey, at least you can say, hey, I'm growing a child at this point.
That kind of give you a reason behind it.
Exactly.
And some of those realities of the sport of bodybuilding, so many people don't talk about them, or they don't, going into it, they don't know about them because they're not talked about a lot. And it's the same with anything, whatever it is, like, look at the NFL, like it looks like it'd be so glorious to be out there and play, but then you have to think about, oh well, the knees and the backs and the joints and like the, simply being away from your family, and there's always the downside to the things that are good, and you can call them sacrifices or downsides, whatever you want to call them, but it is that sacrifice that you have to make. I think when in today's day and age, when sacrificing things is kind of like doesn't happen as much and you get things instantly, do you see kind of, and I know you're kind of not new in the sport, but you're also not, 15 years in it, but do
Yeah.
you see like potential downside for the sport of bodybuilding because it does require so much discipline and sacrifice and consistency when those things maybe aren't as prevalent?
It is a very intense sport. It is very self-centered. There is a lot of, I think, like you said, not necessarily negative, but aspects of it that make it not for everyone, right? It is a very specific person that it takes to be able to say, hey, I can be this disciplined, I can do this for this long and continue, long term. So absolutely. I mean, I think the fact that you do have to focus so much on yourself or you miss out on holidays and stuff, there are sacrifices that you make. But if you have the right support system, that's huge, right? If you don't have a family or people that can maybe not understand it, because I still think that people like have a hard time wrapping their head around the craziness that it is. But if they're supportive, that makes the big difference. And there are a lot of the unhealthy aspects to it when you're that lean and you're that restrictive for that long. But if you also have the guidance from a coach who has your best interest in mind, and you have those benchmarks and little check marks that you're taking, whether you're doing blood work or you're taking care of yourself too, and thinking about the big picture and not just like how many shows can I do, then it does allow you to kind of fit it into a lifestyle a little bit easier. um, but it definitely is something you have to manage and have a good support system to be able to do.
Yeah, for sure. The people around you know extremely important in whatever you want to achieve in life. But when it comes to like your experiences so far, what do you feel like you've learned the most about yourself and doing this and competing and prep and all of this stuff involved in bodybuilding? What do you think you've learned about yourself?
Gosh, that's a good question, but a hard question to answer, because I feel like I've been in the midst of it so long that like my brain has had one track. It's been a one track mind for months, for like a year actually. So I think it just comes down to like, I know myself that I'm a structured type A type person, but I think that this has shown me that like, okay, when I know I'm capable of something, like I'm not going to give up on that, and I want that same dedication that I have for this sport to then go into the other aspects of my life and be able to instill that in other people. Because I think that's the big thing that I've realized during this is like, were there days I'm not motivated? Absolutely. Like, I don't, there was times in prep where I'm doing 2.5 hours of cardio, and it's like, no, I'm not motivated to do that. But if you can pull out the discipline, that is like the big thing. And obviously, I've proven to myself this season that I can do that. So it takes a strong work ethic to do that. But if I can share my own journey and be able to like realize that about myself and help at least improve that, whether it's my family or friends or the people that follow me, like that's what I want people to realize is like, we all have the days we're not motivated, but if you set yourself goals, it is possible. You just have to keep going. Like you just have to continue to put the work in, be consistent, and have that discipline.
What advice would you have for, new bodybuilders to do, maybe there's something that a lot of newcomers aren't great at, whether it be posing or whatever. Like, what advice would you have to tell somebody, hey, make sure, like, we know you're probably going to be training, we know you're probably going to be, decent on your diet, but what else would you give them advice on? And maybe it's something to do with, posing, or maybe it's something to do with like, make sure you have the right people around you. But for you, what would that advice be?
I would definitely recommend, like, if it's something you are interested in, don't rush to stage, but don't also hold yourself back. I think it's really important to go into a prep with a solid foundation of muscle and having that overall look already. And I know myself, I dove in way before I had that, but that kick started everything for me. And while I didn't bring the strongest package that year, it was my first experience in the sport. And it allowed me to see, is this something I'm really wanting to pursue or not? So at that point, it's like, get your foot in the door, try it out, experience it. Because I hear so many people, especially guys, that are like, oh, I need to be bigger. Like, I don't want to do a show until I'm bigger or I'm, X number of pounds. And it's like, to some extent, yes. But how will you ever know if you're even competitive up there or if you really love the sport if you don't just have one show to get your foot in the door? I'm not saying to go and, expect to win, but experience it and then come back and say, okay, reevaluate and take that and run with it, because then your fire's lit. You see the competition around you and you know exactly, like, hey, this is what I need to improve on, and then set yourself up for, those that show in a year or two, once you have time to really develop your physique. Like, there's plenty of people who they want the look, but they don't want to get in a tiny bikini, which is totally fine. And you can do that and honestly make it more of a lifestyle. You're just not going to be shredded, year round. People just have to realize that. But that's not healthy for anyone, whether you step on stage or not.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think with a lot of like influencers and things, it is kind of confusing for people who don't know any better. Like, well, why do they look like this all the time? Well, this other person looks like this sometimes. I think
Mhm.
that can be very, very confusing.
Yeah, no one really wants to show off their non-stage physique all the time, right? People get into improvement season and they stop posting, they stop sharing. And
Yeah.
so the reality of that, which is most of the time, isn't talked about as much as, hey, look at me tanned up, makeup and, hair done. And that's the stuff that gets the attention, sadly, but it does miss a big chunk of the sport.
Yeah, like most of it that creates that is it's funny, but somebody told me use these exact words. It's like it's mundane, it's meticulous, it's not like super fun. It is what it is. Like it's just the process of it.
Exactly. It's not exciting to show, here's the same breakfast I ate yesterday. Here's the same, set of squats that I did last week with 5 extra pounds. Like,
Yeah,
yep, just go through the motions. But
for sure. And that's what I think it has to come down to is like finding something that you love. To other people, it might be crazy, it might be boring, it might be whatever, but something that you love that you can go through the motions every day and get a little bit better every day and know that like there's this bigger thing that you're working for, but for today, it's probably not going to be super exciting, but find that for you.
exactly. No, it is. You wake up, you want to train, you want to make your meals because it does add up, like we said, like those little things add up over time to make the physique or to get you to that squat PR or whatever your goal is. So it is cool.
Yeah. So I really appreciate you coming on though. It was great to get to chat with you today.
Yeah, it was awesome. I'm glad we finally got to do this. A long time coming.
It has been.